Welcome to the final video in your research paper preparation. This one is going to talk specifically about research expectations and some of the resources that are available to you. So the first of these that I just want to mention, this is available for you to download directly through our site on Canvas. It's part of the course. I would really encourage you to use it, is the LaSalle University Art History Writing Guide. It'll walk you through a little bit of what is required for this paper, talks about different resources that are available to you. There we go. Talks about some of the things we've already discussed in class, the formal elements, how to write about them, some resources that are available to you at LaSalle, and then it also talks about different types of citations that work for MLA in particular, which is the type of citation I want you to use here. So there's parenthetical, how to put something into the paper if you've quoted it, and then other bibliographic formats that should be used for your formal bibliography at the end of the paper. So how to list a book, articles, newspaper articles, etc. And there's also a link in here to the Temple University OWL website that has additional MLA formatting resources for you. It also talks about plagiarism, which I went over in the previous video as well, so I would really like you to review this when you have an opportunity. Beyond that, I wanted to talk to you about how to use the library's website to your best advantage to get the kind of research that you want. So I've talked a little bit about resources that I don't want you to use. To give you a couple of examples, actually, I'm using the Jean-Auguste Dominique Eng option for my research references here. If you decide to choose that particular option, then here's a little bit of an insight for you. I said in the original paper video that I do not want you using internet web sources, and I'm giving you a couple of examples here of why that is. So I did a basic web search for Jean-Auguste Dominique Eng, which I think is probably the simplest of all the search terms you might come up with. And this is one of the sites that came up. It is jeanaugustemoniqueeng.org. So .org implies that some kind of organization put this up here, but if you look, it looks like this is a place where you can actually order a reproduction of an image. It has very, very cursory information about Eng on this page. This is a really basic biography. You are not going to get in-depth information. So here you can see that Odalisque is available. It doesn't give you much. And anything that you're going to find on here is not verified. It's not written by an art historian. It's not written by a scholar. We don't know who runs this website. You'd have to do a lot of work to figure out who even keeps it up. This is something I would definitely avoid. Similarly, here's a website called theartstory.org, another organization. The Art Story presents itself as a pretty reputable website, but again, this is not verified information. This one gives a lot more information about Eng and maybe key topics that are addressed in his art. But once again, you don't know who's giving you this information. And the chances are you can find a better source to give you very similar information. So I would avoid things like this. An example for contrast of something that might be okay, but I would run it by me before you use it, is potentially something from a reputable museum website. So the National Gallery in England has information about Eng. It may or may not be information that is helpful. It also is probably available in other sources that will give you more background information and be a little bit more helpful. So I would not run to this kind of website right off the bat. So if I go back to the Connolly website, this is really where I want you to start. So if you go to the homepage for the Connolly website and you start with just a summons search, and for a simple search term, I put in Eng and Orientalist painting, which is pretty close to what the topic of the paper is. And if you do a search, you come up with quite a few options. Many of these options are actually available online. So then it just comes down to helping discern which ones are valuable, which ones are going to help with the topic that you're actually writing on. So for example, the second search result is the Harem Fantasy in 19th Century Orientalist Painting. This is an online source, which means that you actually don't have to go to the library to get it. It's going to take you to a journal article, and you can get that full text article online. The term harem fantasy is helpful because both Eng's painting and Delacroix's painting are harem images, and they both are referencing Orientalist painting, which is also here. So very likely this is a good example of a source. If you keep going, you're going to see a lot of these are references to articles, but some of them are also going to be books. So Defending the West, A Critique of Edward Said's Orientalism, which is available in the library. Edward Said is actually a very well-known author who wrote about and coined the term Orientalism, so reading things that have to do with Edward Said may also be useful for your research. However, this is a book that you're going to have to go and get off the shelves of the library, which I very much encourage. I would say if you don't have 1 or 2 books on your bibliography, you are missing pieces there. So then beyond that is how to use the website to get to databases where there are going to be helpful journal articles. So one of the tabs here is databases, and you get a drop down of all the different databases that LaSalle pays for to give you access. The one that I like the best is JSTOR. I know some of you have used that already for some of the projects this semester. There are some other ones that may or may not be helpful. Let's see. EBSCOhost may be helpful. ProQuest may be helpful. LexisNexis may be helpful. But what's nice about JSTOR is that it tends to have specifically access to journals that are art historical or historical in nature. So they are particularly helpful. So I did the same search in JSTOR that I did for the library itself, Ang and Orientalist painting. And you get a variety of topics here, some of which may be helpful and some of which may not be. So you have to kind of open them up and decide whether or not they're relevant to the research you are doing. So here's one that comes up, Ang, Géricault, and Monsieur Auguste. Monsieur Auguste refers to Ang himself. Géricault is another Orientalist romantic French painter. So we've talked about Ang and Delacroix. Géricault is another. So this may or may not be useful. Might be something to open up. Some of these are going to talk about Ottoman Turkish art and European Orientalist painting. Again, that may or may not be helpful. Things that you want to watch out for are reviews of books. Most of these ones in this particular search are actual journal articles. They will say if they are a review of a book. And if it's a review of a book that sounds interesting, I would look for the book. That would probably be more helpful than actually reading a review of it. If you are interested in trying to find a book but can't find it in the library's website, there is something called, where is it here? WorldCat, which is another one of the databases we have access to. So WorldCat references all of the academic libraries that LaSalle may or may not have access to. And if you can find it on WorldCat, then you can use Interlibrary Loan to request the book. If you have not used Interlibrary Loan, I would go into the library and talk to somebody and get someone there to walk you through it. But it is a very, very helpful resource that we have available to get things that we might not have at LaSalle's library. You're in a city. Philadelphia has some of the best academic libraries on the East Coast. So chances are, if it's a source you need and you found it on WorldCat, you can find it in Philadelphia and get it very, very quickly. But if this is going to be part of your research process, I would get started on it sooner than later because it does take time to get them transferred from one library to another. Just a final reminder to stay away from encyclopedias. Encyclopedias are very, very generic information. If I go back to our little database thing here, you'll find at the top something called, or in the middle here, something called Oxford Art Online. This is probably the art historical encyclopedia, but it is still an encyclopedia. An encyclopedia is essentially fact that is not being contested. There's nothing being said in an encyclopedia that is controversial, that is an original idea. It is typically very basic information. So if you look up Ang in here, you're going to get a biography of Jean-Auguste Dominique Ang. It is going to be really basic information. Where was he born? What style is he associated with? What are some things that people like to know about Ang? But it is not going to answer the question that the final paper topic relates to. I've already cautioned you against biographical information. In very few circumstances is it going to be relevant. So I would just do yourselves a favor and stay away from encyclopedias as much as possible. If you need some basic common information, sure, you can get it out of an encyclopedia, but it is probably in a book. If you get a book out about Jean-Auguste Dominique Ang, That same information is going to be in there, and then you're also getting access to a resource that will probably prove a lot more useful. And my final piece is that if it is something that came from a lecture that I gave, a resource that I've written and provided to you, you do not need to cite that in your paper. That is information that I am freely giving you. I am not copywriting that information. You don't have to quote me directly. I wouldn't rip off my words. I wouldn't say exactly the same thing that I have said already. Paraphrase it, but you do not need to cite my lectures as part of your research. And if I see that in your bibliography, I will question whether or not you actually listened to this video. So if you have questions about anything in the process of researching your paper, deciding on a topic, understanding what the requirements of the paper are, please reach out to me. As I have said before, and I will continue saying, if I don't know there's a problem, I cannot help you. So please, please, please let me know. You will be required to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me. I'll be sending an announcement out about that, and you should be ready to be able to talk about and ask specific questions that you may have as your research starts. Thank you.